I'm surprised at the lack of AI information here at reInvent. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, it's Alan Shimel for Techstrong Gang. No, there is no lack of AI at AWS reInvent. As a matter of fact, it's downright overwhelming. We're going to talk about that and what is AWS reInvent, what is AWS's plans around AI in its many different flavors. We're also going to give you a real update on what the Techstrong folks, as well as the Futurum folks, have been doing here at AWS reInvent. This is a casual, just two-person version of the gang. We put a call out to Silicon Valley and requested diplomatic immunity.
I was wondering where you were going. As I was, you talking about
Swartz to be able to leave the jurisdiction and come down here to Las Vegas.
It was a jailbreak.
Some would call it a jailbreak. I was trying to be fancy, John.
Okay.
But the one and only Jon Swartz is with us here live in person at reInvent in our suite at the Wynn. Jon, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Alan. So I was kind of up in the air. I was good. I talked to the AWS about just showing up and talking to some of their executives in AWS fashion. I don't mean to be rude to the hosts. Sometimes they take a long time to kind of put together their
make up their minds.
Yes,
execute.
And set up their appointments. So I did end up doing that. I ended up coming down here, and I ended up being, as you are, overwhelmed with the amount of AI news. But there are also some other things, not just the news, but where the company is going, and some of the people who made appearances here, which I think is kind of foreboding and maybe presages the direction the company is going in many different areas, not just enterprises, but climate change, future investments they're going to make in some certain startups, and maybe changes they're going to make to the robots, the 1 million robots they have in their warehouses. So,
wow.
So I spent a lot of time roaming and talking to different people to get an idea of what they're going to do in the ecosystem. And their plans, to be blunt, are literally to take over the world in a sense.
Well, it's always been that though, hasn't it?
Oh, it has.
And that's not new. What I find interesting, well, first of all, I got to ask you, did they give you the sweatshirt?
They just, okay, so can I, okay, I'll.
Was I going to get one?
So I filled out a survey. The reason why I did that is because I came here at the last minute, I drove. And so I didn't have much of a wardrobe. I didn't have much time or much of a warning from AWS. They told me literally the night before the meetings what they had confirmed. So I showed up, and as my reward for doing the meetings, they gave me this nice sweater, which I will wear today, maybe give it to somebody else. It's very comfortable.
It's pretty a paler shade of blue.
I had to give an evaluation of the AWS CEO's keynote speech on Tuesday as part of it.
Still gave you that?
And I lied.
Okay.
I lied.
He lied. I was going to say, okay.
So, okay. But I mean, so Alan, like for instance, I know you have theories about where this is going. Maybe you want to talk about that first and what AWS is priming to do with enterprises, and then I'll discuss some of the things I came across.
So I sat through the 3 hours of keynotes yesterday, and you and I were sitting here in our studio watching the simulcast of today's keynote. And it was all AI all the time, pretty much, right? But here's the thing. When you look at when you look at a lot of the AI offerings they're building out, they seem to be end user, like consumer.
On the surface, it appears to be.
Nova it's a ChatGPT, Anthropic, Claude competitor almost, and they clearly positioned because they benchmark.
You know what leads to that conclusion, I think, too, and I think it's a very logical conclusion, is that Andy Jassy, who has not been at this show for 3 years and who's now the Amazon CEO, showed up to
He's the one who did that one, yeah, the Nova. Everything around Q is AI generated. today, Dr. Swami, I forget his last name. Anyway, everything he was doing was AI was AI empowerment. Here's the thing, though. In my best Dr. Evil voice, what they want to do is they want to build their own infrastructure that's, it doesn't have to be best in class. It has to be good enough. Infrastructure for GPUs and AI and the storage that goes with it. On top of that, they're building their own models, their own AI, everything you need. Not to be an end user to use the AI, though that's what these applications are for. They're not true applications, they're building blocks. It's because their plan to dominate the world is based around being the place to host AI-empowered applications, and they're building these AI building blocks for developers to attach to via API and build tomorrow's AI-empowered applications that run on Amazon Silicon, in Amazon data centers, on Amazon networks.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. The other thing that was interesting to me is, so you have Jassy come back to talk about Nova, and there is a different end game than from the coverage that we've seen so far, because in a sense we're just covering the news, but we kind of go deeper into it. What was interesting to me is, I think on Tuesday, and I there's so many things that Amazon did that for the first time I'm using a computer on camera. So there's a guy named Benoit Dubin
From Apple.
He's senior director of machine learning and AI. He used to work at Amazon.
Yes.
Apple, the idea of Apple appearing on stage at anyone's event, including a competitor in other areas, to me said a lot. In a sense, he came in to do a testimonial about their the services that they use, or how they use Amazon services for all their products. He went down the entire product line, and also Amazon's behind the scenes role in Apple Intelligence. So Apple uses the AWS chips Graviton and Inferentia for efficiency use, but he also said they're in the early stages of evaluating Trainium too. So in a sense, this is a coup for Amazon in terms of their competition with Microsoft and Google. But you add that with Jassy, and then some of the other things I heard that were not directly involved with the products, and you see this vast, crazy, ambitious plan they have, which is going to be even easier, without getting political like I usually do. But it's going to get easier in the current climate, because one of their antagonists, Lena Khan's, going to be out of the FTC. So they can go full bore. They're going to do it regardless.
Of course, that's assuming that Jeff Bezos crawls his way back into the good graces at the court in the palace.
I think he has made efforts. I think there has been some communication between him and Trump. And I think he's also, given his actions at the Washington Post and not making a presidential endorsements, says volumes. That was the groundwork.
Cost of 200,000 plus subscriptions to the Washington Post.
So be it. I guess if you do the math, though, then look at what they're going to try to do here, right? It made big payoff in the end.
I don't want to go down the whole politic route, but I wonder if Elon Musk doesn't wind up becoming the gatekeeper for the tech world to access.
As long as he's in the good graces of Trump, that is probably the case, but I'm not confident that's going to last more than 6 to 9 months. But that's another story that will eventually.
Really, with two stable geniuses. But be that as I didn't want to go down.
Yeah, no. But I just think the context of what they said. And I'll mention a couple of other things later that they have in mind that they're working on, that all ties together to generative AI in particular. But I think they're going to be even more confident now and more at ease in the climate that they're competing
full speed ahead. But let me give you maybe a contrary thought here. Misery loves company. And both Apple and AWS have been at least perceived, if not in fact, as being maybe laggards right? Microsoft's got their open AI relationship.
Yes.
Google's been all in. I mean, they bought Deep Knowledge or Deep Minds
Yes.
a while ago, and they've got
They're ahead of them. Clearly ahead of them.
initiative.
By the way, Alan, I was going to tell you, in Silicon Valley, and this is some insight that I get directly from the companies, they are incredibly touchy about their status and how they're perceived in the AI race.
Yeah.
So clearly they're behind Microsoft and Google. You mentioned Amazon. Apple announces intelligence like a year after everyone else has made their move.
And I
use it.
I've got my iPhone 16 Pro here. I've got the M1 iPads. I don't. I realize it's just incremental. I am on the.
But that's what Apple does. They're incremental about everything, and they popularize something. It becomes mainstream, and then they become a dominant player. So they wait for everybody else to establish the market.
Well, that's the Dell model too, right? Dell doesn't get in the market until it's sizable enough, and they believe they can capture a substantial share of it. But that being said, seeing Apple out on the stage, that was my thought is, hey, these were two, if you ever saw Animal House, right? They walk into the fancy, nice looking fraternity and they say, oh yeah, Lenny, come sit over here. This is Iman and Mohammed and Mordecai. Have a seat and make yourself at home.
And you never see the host again, and they shove them off to the side.
Greg Marmalade's off, with Kitty or whatever her name was.
Yeah, I can't remember her name.
But you know what I mean?
Exactly. There's these guys are in their suits, they're Buster Browns, and their Flounder and Pinto are left to fend for themselves.
The losers.
Just as a side, I know we do this a lot. You and I do this a lot. We do these kind of cultural side swipes.
Yeah.
But that's something. There's a lot of things that happen in that movie that you can apply to everyday life.
No doubt about it.
Life lessons that
The
they all.
genius of National Lampoon.
Absolutely. And in a sense, we have kind of the haves and the have-nots. And I'll tell you, I was talking to somebody who works with Salesforce and Agentforce. So before I was here, I did a story that was somewhat negative about Salesforce and their AI entry. Benioff, he immediately started texting me. And he said to me, you're missing the point. We're not that far behind. We're actually in front. And he would send, and he protested far too much. But I listened to him, and I did a story based on what he told me. But everyone is very, very touchy about it. And I think AWS, if I can take a liberty, do you think in a sense that they announced the kitchen sink strategy?
Oh, I think they've thrown everything
Out to make it seem as if they're as relevant as the others?
Also, yes. But look, you're not talking about bad luck schleprock here, right? This is AWS. This is Amazon. They do have the wherewithal and the capacity to rule the world, right? Because they do have the data centers. They are developing and have developed their own silicon. They have developed these.
They are going to wean themselves away from NVIDIA. Among the big three who do tens of billions of dollars of business with NVIDIA,
They will be the first one.
They will be I think that's going to happen.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. He said it yesterday or the day before, rather. He said, we're in the whole industry, not just AWS. Gen AI itself is in its infancy. This is a marathon, not a 100-yard dash, and the first steps have just been taken. AWS is playing the long game here.
They did with cloud. I mean, they've done people would look at them and see this company spending billions of dollars on infrastructure and losing money every quarter.
Yep.
There was an end game. There was a method to their madness, and look where it got them.
Absolutely. And I think that's the
it's happening all over again.
That's the game. This is a long game. Now, the issue, I think, is AI is evolving so quickly, it's hard to figure out, if you're playing that long game, what's the road look like 5 years from now?
That's always been the problem in tech, though, right? Is anticipating where the market's going to go and spending. How far do you miss? And I mean, that happened with Microsoft, with the internet. It happened with AWS in a sense, to a lesser degree in AI. It's happening with Apple. It was interesting. So when AWS came up with these meetings, so I met with a couple of executives of theirs who run accelerators within the company. One of them runs a climate change accelerator, and she outlined, her name's Elizabeth Kaufman. She outlined a number of things they're doing in terms of battery efficiency, which, by the way, is the holy grail in going back to Silicon Valley. That is the obsession. It leads to everything else. So they're working with this company. And the reason why I'm mentioning this, there was another woman who I met with named Catherine Van Nuys, who is the boss of the climate change representative. Catherine runs the Gen AI accelerator. And you know, one of the first companies that they discovered and they decided to invest in was Anthropic. So that was her connection. She said, we started off, this company had only a few employees. We thought they had promise. We have $1 billion, it's like $1 billion fund. We decided to put some money into them. And now that investment, it's out $8 billion. Yeah, they just doubled their investment. So,
but here's the thing. Yes, you're 100.
So they're seeding everything.
Yes, they are. They're trying to, as I think we said yesterday on the gang, they're playing every number on the roulette except 0 and 00. But red, black, they've got it covered.
That's an excellent analogy,
right?
Yes.
But the unique thing, two unique things about AWS and Amazon. Number one, they've never been afraid to eat their young. And Anthropic may wind up being a prime example of this as they kind of cast that to the side as they go with their own, right?
So they have these symbiotic relationships with companies until they become the
symbiotic. Okay,
or
parasitic.
Parasitic's a better word, but they wean or they use, for lack of a better word, use something and run it dry, and then they decide, wait a second, we'll go on our own.
But we can do it ourselves. So I think that, and Claude's a great product. It may have legs in spite of what Amazon does, but, that's certainly a possibility. The other thing is only AWS can kick off their thing by talking about how deep and great their relationship with NVIDIA is,
right?
And how happy they are with.
And they made an announcement with them right, exactly.
And how happy they are with their investment in Anthropic and all that it's doing in Claude, working in Bedrock, and say all of these things, wasting probably 20 minutes of a 3-hour keynote, and I do mean 3-hour keynote on their NVIDIA relationship, on Anthropic, and then in the next breath say, we're coming out with our own silicon that beats NVIDIA and our own Gen AI that is benchmarked to be better than Claude.
That's the Amazon way. Take no prisoners.
No, but it's okay. Microsoft took no prisoners. Right. There was a time Oracle took no prisoners. Right. But they weren't as duplicitous. And duplicitous has evil connotations, but they weren't. I can't think of a less evil.
Yeah,
two-sided, two-faced, but duplicitous. To be your friend here while plotting your demise here. It's Machiavellian.
It is.
I got every big word I got.
Well, you're a lawyer, so you have an extended vocabulary, much more than that.
It's Machiavellian.
It is Machiavellian, and it's inevitable. It's happened before, it will happen again as they move their tentacles. They strike these relationships and then they cast them aside. It's almost like Elizabeth Taylor. You marry somebody, you have the husband.
Well, maybe it was King Henry VIII.
King Henry VIII is better when he chopped their head. Yeah.
Well, not all of them. It was died, divorced, died, divorced.
You remember this.
Died. No, there's a rhyme. Divorced, died, divorced, died. Died is not really, off with their head.
Yeah.
Died. And then the last one, he did it.
Yeah.
Annulled. There was annulled, and then one more that stayed on Catherine of Argonne.
In a sense, Amazon's working their way down a list. So this is what was interesting to me too, is like you've got a lot of AI related conferences.
Yeah.
And the one guest speaker who is kind of growing tiresome is Jensen.
Yeah, he's here.
And he is, it's interesting to see the dynamics play out. I'm sure he knows where this is leading, and they're making their own path to be less
So let's explore that.
to be less reliant on Amazon, Microsoft, and Google eventually.
Well, that's NVIDIA's game.
Yeah.
NVIDIA's game, and it's a card out of the Microsoft book. It's about the software, stupid. So if NVIDIA says, if we control the software that people use for the AI game, we got them. We got them, because then we can embrace and extend that software so it runs best
You know,
on our chips.
so one thing just popped in my head. Somebody mentioned to me Amazon's long-range plans, which impact their employees, by the way. So I hear from two different things. I hear theories about what they're going to do with their warehouse control, and I get a lot of messages from people who are organizing as labor representatives against Amazon because they see where this is going. And Gen AI, in a sense, is going to be able eventually, I'm not sure how quickly, but probably sooner than we think, convert most of the 800,000 to 1 million robots that work in the warehouses. They're going to be able to do things like sort through products.
Yes.
And here's what the tie-in that is so creepy to me is that there is a startup in San Francisco I think it's called Physical Intelligence. Bezos is one of the big investors in this company. These are robots that do household chores, like the robot from the Jetsons.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen videos of these things. They sort clothes, they bus tables, and Bezos he's a big investor in this company, and he probably says, "Wait a second, if these robots can do this, think of what they can do at our warehouses."
Oh, sure.
And I remember just going like years and years ago. I went to a place, Fernley, Nevada, one of the first distribution centers. He was there, and I talked to him about what they plan to do, and he's like, the era of robots will come along, and God knows we won't have anybody here.
No.
And I think this is part of their plan. It's going to affect their own people as well.
Whenever I talk to young people, or I was taking an Uber to the airport to come here this week. I was talking to my Uber driver. Told him I was coming out here, and he said, this AI scares me. I said, well, as an Uber driver, I can understand that. Because they're not going to need drivers. He says, yeah, I should have gone to be a doctor. I said, what makes you think a doctor won't be replaced?
Hey, they're already starting that.
Absolutely.
They started down that path with there's a dental robot. I mean,
they've been doing, but here's where rubber meets the road, where the robot is empowered by AI.
You just went right to my point. That's exactly
right now you've got the dentist, the orthodontist, the surgeon.
There's a high-rise window washer in Manhattan.
He's done.
It's the robots. They're already testing it.
Sure. But when you make that robot smart enough to know, well, maybe window washing is a little too simple, but you make that robot smart enough to run a factory or a distro center, you could organize your unions all you want, right? The three of you will sit in the coffee break room because the rest of this plant will be run by robots. And I think that's the game here. I mean, from Amazon's point of view.
I saw something, it's kind of along the same lines. It was kind of this sinister kind of idea that this Department of Government Efficiency, part of the edict is advancement of AI as fast as possible, because here's the thought. If we want to get rid of a bunch of government employees, maybe we can replace them with bots and we become more efficient. And that's
you don't see any irony, though, that the guy running that is the guy who wrote the letter about going slow.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's one of the few guys, Musk was one of the few guys who said we should slow down on this.
Well, that's because it came out that they didn't do what he wanted with OpenAI.
Right, until he had his own
irony or hypocrite.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So he was trying to slow everything down when he was behind it, didn't have an answer. Now that it's full speed ahead. God, that sounds like Amazon. But I mean, that sounds like Silicon Valley. I mean, we're going to be blunt. We're going to be just
but this
blunt about it.
It's take no prisoners. Do what they got to do. And the thing about AWS is, again, the girth of their business matches their ambitions,
Right.
and their ambitions are big.
And the thing, the history with Amazon is they set their mind to something. They destroy industries, and they do it in record disrupt. I think of it as oh yeah, that's me. When I see disruption, I sometimes see people losing their jobs or industries rails.
For that.
Yeah, they did it to the book industry. They're going to do it to the pharmaceutical industry to some extent. Food delivery. I mean, they're everywhere.
Well, Amazon, certainly. AWS in particular, though, John, I think their game here is that the overwhelming majority of apps that are going to come out in the next 3 to 5 years or more are going to be AI empowered. That's
right.
You know, if you're not building an AI empowered app or modernizing to an AI empowered app right now, you're toast. And they want to be the place for AI empowered apps. You want to go run your Office Copilot or your, something like that? Yeah, go ahead, use one of those other two guys. But if you really have an AI empowered app that you want to run on state-of-the-art AI empowering infrastructure, AWS is the place to be. And if they're making that bet, they've already done their calculations and they know that that's going to be the dominant business going forward for cloud.
Yeah. So when I was talking to the climate change person, in a sense, she kind of is reading between the lines. She's like, we're doing a lot of work in terms of SMRs, like a small nuclear facility.
Yes.
We're thinking about energy consumption. We're thinking about data center efficiency, building out data centers. And I said, well, this is because of your AI ambitions and all the energy that's required. Oh, yeah, that's true. But we also really believe in great ideas. And I think these are great ideas that enhance and extend their leadership in this space.
Yes. But their game plan is based upon, I've done VC-backed startups my whole life before starting Techstrong. First rule when a VC is looking at a business plan, is this a potentially big enough market? And can this group, leadership group, can this business model, business plan, be one of the top 3 in this potentially big market? If it's not a big enough market, I'm not investing in it. And if I don't think that this particular plan has legs to be a top 3 player in that market, I'm not investing in it. Put that on Uber, no pun intended with Uber, but put that on Uber steroids, the AWS, and they have made that is the market, AI empowered applications.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you did the economy. We mentioned Musk, and there's this fear because he's the world's richest man that he's going to usurp his access.
Well, he did lose $56 billion yesterday.
Oh, he'll regain it.
So,
yeah, but he'll probably regain it eventually. Who knows? But yeah, taking that into account, that's like chump change for the rest of us. But regardless, there's always this fear about him taking advantage of, say, taking more advantage of like satellite deals or defense deals.
Well,
now,
why, Bezos has Blue Origin. Why do you think he's got his knee pads on?
And by the way,
that's not lipstick, the orange. No.
So the FCC nominee Carr has said there's no reason why we shouldn't extend and expand these deals, satellites, not just to
Elon,
but to
Bezos
with Kuiper. And with Kuiper, that's another. So it's a feeding trough, right? And so
it's life in the oligarchy.
I mean, it's gotten worse, and it just gets continuously worse.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Oh Jesus! God,
it's gonna be. But again, not to go down that road. AWS, they have done their homework. They're making their bets. And now it's a question of execution.
And I've never bet against them in terms of execution. I have to say something. We go to a lot of trade shows, and usually they're the same kind of slog. The keynotes are getting longer.
Yes.
There are too many breakout sessions. there's too much messaging. They're inundating us with press releases. But I have to say the best organized show by far is reInvent, based on my experience. And one of the things they do that's brilliant, but also kind of creepy, is they have the press room is set up extremely close to all the meeting rooms. So you only have to walk a couple hundred feet and you will be put from one interview to another to another. And if you don't go to that, they'll just come to the press room. I've seen Jassy when he was AWS CEO.
Right.
He will go to the press room, and while the press is eating, of course, he's pontificating, and it's like almost like a sense of brainwashing. As Microsoft used to do that.
Yeah.
So when I worked at USA Today, they would have us come up and visit them for a day. You'd be there from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. back to back to back meetings all day, not a break, no break. You even go to lunch with them, and they will do the same message.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's be fair. They're very tight-fisted on giving out press and analyst passes. But once they give you one, they track how many meetings you go to or you do, right? How many sessions you attend? Do you sit in at the keynote? Because, next year for Christmas, they check their list and check it twice before you get in.
They want ROI from your coverage,
right.
and they expect it. And you're right, Alan. It's one of the few places where after a meeting, I get a reminder, oh, we enjoyed meeting with you. It was like a bot. Well, it probably is a bot, but they're just hitting me, cascading me. And I got like 10 messages this morning about every conceivable thing they're doing today. And they repeat things. And you know what? Going back to that Microsoft trip, they got me to the point where I would think in the way they would explain something to me, and then when someone asked me about it, my experience there, I would regurgitate it.
Yeah.
Versus like if I went to Apple and I talked to 5 people, I get 5 opinions. They were all on message, and I think AWS is on message. They got the budget, they got the ambition, they got the machines in place, and I'd never count against.
No, I wouldn't count. I think. You know what? They have a great strategy for them. And like I said, it's about executing, and don't count against them on execution. Jon, we're about out of time. We have one more day of Techstrong Gang coverage coming tomorrow. We also have some live coverage today, as well as a whole bunch of other content on Techstrong TV. I know you've got some meetings.
Yes, and I'm going back. I'll be back in Silicon Valley for the next Techstrong Gang. I got out. I was like
48-hour pass.
Yeah, it was like the Groundhog's Day. I peeked out.
I know, you have to invoke the 25th Amendment. Who's running Silicon Valley while you're gone?
Oh, they'll do fine without. They do better without me. So,
Jon Swartz here in person for Techstrong Gang. We are live. Well, we're not live on Techstrong Gang, but we'll be live here today in our suite at the Wynn, covering all the AWS information you need to know. This is Alan Shimel for Techstrong and Techstrong Gang. We'll see you all tomorrow.